Are Nazis, white supremacists, just weird people basically deciding what books our kids can read in classrooms all across the country? The Washington Post did a deep dive into this and came to some really startling conclusions. This is, frankly, just breathtaking. The title of the piece over at the Washington Post is Objection to Sexual LGBTQ Content Propels Spike in Book Challenges, which sounds kind of anodyne, but the subhead is where they kind of buried the lead into the subhead. An analysis of book challenges from across the nation shows the majority were filed by just 11 people. 11 people. 11 people are bringing all this to us. In total, officials in more than 100 of those school systems, which are spread across 37 states, provided 1,065 complaints totaling 2,506 pages. Nearly half of the filings, 43%, targeted titles with LGBTQ characters or themes. 36% targeted characters targeted titles featuring characters of color or dealing with issues of race and racism. So basically what you've got is homophobes and racists who are driving this process, and there's 11 people who are responsible for the vast majority of it. This, again, reading from the Washington Post, the majority of the 1,000 plus book challenges analyzed by the Washington Post were filed by just 11 people. Each of these people brought 10 or more challenges against books in their school district. One man filed 92 challenges. They were responsible for 60% of all filings. And to make it even more weird, the Post found individuals who filed 10 or more complaints were responsible for 2/3 of all challenges. In some cases, these serial filers relied on a network of volunteers gathered together under the aegis of conservative parents groups such as Moms for Liberty. This is, by the way, a brand new phenomenon. This tracks the Trump era. They note from the year 2000 all the way up to the early 2010s, fewer than 1% to 3% of book challenges filed in the United States had to do with going after books that had queer characters in them. 1% to 3%. In 2018, the second year of the Trump presidency, that number rose to 16%. 16% of the book challenges were going after the queer community. By 2020, it was 20%. And by 2022, now what happened between 2020 and 2022, Fox News got on the bandwagon and right-wing hate radio did. 45.5% of all challenges were against books that had positive characterizations of people who are members of the LGBTQ community. 45% in 2022. That's the last year for which there is data available. They also note in here, and I'm trying to find the place. Oh, this is interesting. Only 21% of the challenges are actually filed by parents. The majority of these challenges are not even coming from parents. 14% said that they were filing on behalf of a Moms for Liberty chapter. Only 2 out of these thousands of challenges were filed by students. 2, not 2%, 2. And it's only happening in a couple of states in a big way. Texas, 32% of all the challenges. Florida, 17% of all the challenges. Missouri, 11% of the challenges. No other state is in double digits. The next state, number 4, is Pennsylvania with 5%. Everybody else is 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that. You know, it's just... This is a classic example of how a right-wing echo chamber combined with craven politicians who are willing to destroy the lives of young people who are, gay, lesbian, trans, non-conforming, the LGBTQ community. They're absolutely willing to destroy the lives of these vulnerable people, among the most vulnerable in our society, for political gain. Pure and simple. To advance the interests of the neo-fascist Republican Party. What has become the neo-fascist Republican Party. Now down in Florida, I mean, they even got Amanda Gorman's poem banned. I mentioned this yesterday. Amanda Gorman was the young black woman who wrote this beautiful, beautiful poem about how, love can conquer hate, and, together we're going to work for a country that works for all. And these are my words, not hers. I don't have I was looking around for the poem this morning. I didn't quickly find it, and then the time caught up with me, and I had to go on the air. But the Miami-Dade School District has said, no. We've got one parent who objected to this. Because why? It was written by a black woman? It references the black struggle? I mean, this is what's going on. So, story number one. Story number two. The Republican Party loves them some election intimidators. This goes way, way back. Back in the 1960s, William Rehnquist, was a lawyer in Phoenix, Arizona, and a Republican activist. He was a big bear of a man. He was like 6'2", weighed a couple hundred pounds. I mean, Rehnquist was big. And he would stand outside polling places where there were large Hispanic or black or, in particular, Native American populations. And this was back before there were voter ID laws and things like that. And you could just challenge somebody, and then they would have to go home and get, and come back and prove if they were challenged. And so he would just stand there and he would challenge every single voter. And, 3/4 of them would leave and never come back. There was a name for this, in fact. It was called Operation Eagle Eye. We're keeping an eagle eye out for people with brown skin who want to vote. And Rehnquist was quite successful. I mean, they kept the Phoenix area Republican for a long, long time by scaring away, basically, or making it just so difficult that people gave up on had skin any darker than mine. Now they call themselves, instead of calling themselves Eagle Eye, now they call themselves election integrity people. Right. You want election integrity? Do what we did here in Oregon 20 plus years ago. Go to all mail-in ballots. Everybody in Oregon who wants to vote can vote. If you're, when you register, you have to prove that you're a citizen. No problem. We have some of the highest voter participation in the country. 4 weeks before the election, you get the ballot in the mail and you get a little booklet that describes all the candidates. They get to write their own descriptions. Louise and I sit at the coffee table or the dining room table, and we pull, with a laptop, and we Google anything we don't understand. Ballot initiatives, candidates we've never heard of, people running as judges and things like that. I mean, if it's not in the news, you don't know. It's wonderful. Vote by mail is just wonderful. Washington State does it. Utah does it, a Republican state. It's all vote by mail. There are 5 states now that are entirely vote by mail. This should be a nationwide thing. We have no voter fraud. We don't even have Republicans complaining about voter fraud here in Oregon. But now we've got this group linked to the so-called Election Integrity Network, which was launched by Ginny Thomas's good friend, Cleta Mitchell, the Republican lawyer. And there was, down in Florida, they had a problem in the last election, the 2022 election, with Proud Boys and other armed right-wing guys coming into polling places and basically menacing, intimidating black voters. Or even, just normal old people or students, in highly Democratic area. Anybody who looked like they might vote for a Democrat, these guys are. And so the legislature of Florida, which is controlled by Republicans, said this is not right. And so they put together this election integrity bill, which made it harder to vote, cut back on drop boxes, eliminated early voting days, all kinds of stuff to make it, better for Republicans and harder for Democrats, but also made it a crime to intimidate people inside the polling place. And Cleta Mitchell and her buddies got together and said, oh, you can't do that. You've got to keep it perfectly legal for those Proud Boys to go in there with their AR-15s and look over the shoulders of people who are voting. And so, sure enough, Republicans in Florida stripped that language out of the legislation that has now passed and gone on to Ron DeSantis. There's another one. Mitchell's network is pushing another one in North Carolina that would, instead of stopping something that would prevent this, they're actually trying to promote it. It would give partisan poll watchers more freedom to observe election activity and make it more difficult to kick them out if they're intimidating people or if people are complaining about them. This is how the Republican Party is legally paving the way for the Proud Boys and extreme right-wingers to threaten people on Election Day. Once again, why don't we just go to vote by mail? We need a nationwide campaign for vote by mail. It is so easy. It's so comfortable. It works so well. There's no fraud. Nobody can complain about it. There's no voting machines to worry about. Maybe it's the voting machines lobbying against it, the companies. I don't know. But why not?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I mean, wherever you live, if you live in a state that doesn't have, universal vote by mail,